Hey, it's Alex from Voiceflow, and welcome back to this case study series about what we learned from launching an AI-powered Q&A chatbot for Hack the North, the largest hackathon in Canada. This is a go-to guide where you're going to learn a blueprint for making real-world AI solutions, with every phase from evaluation to building and then to deploying and iterating after. This video will look at the first phase of building AI solutions, evaluation and planning. I'll walk you through 5 steps in the planning process for an AI solution, and each time looking at how that went in the Hack the North Q&A chatbot case study. So those include, first of all, identifying problems that AI can help with, and then once you have a specific problem in mind, defining a clear solution for it, then how you should go about choosing a technology that actually fits your solution well. And then once you have your problem, your solution, your technology, it's time to make a clear plan. Finally, we're going to go through the process of presenting an AI solution to stakeholders that might not be used to it, as well as how to establish good timelines for this kind of project. This video, and actually the entire series, is made for builders and leaders who want to build real-world, production-ready products. And watching this will help you prepare and develop your own AI solutions. This case study series is actually really powerful because it isn't just a proof of concept like are shown off in lots of other Voiceflow's videos. This is actually a production-ready agent that'll be deployed at Hack the North this year, an event that I'm helping organize. So let's get straight into the first part, identifying a problem. So we obviously don't want to make a solution and then have to find the problem that it fixes. So let's take a look at how inside your organization you might think about what kind of problems AI can help solve. There's 2 main ways of finding these problems. Either you're a team that's tasked to use AI to innovate or make a solution or optimizations, in which case you can directly go seeking out the kinds of problems that you know AI is good at solving. Or you can learn about AI through content, videos like this, or articles online, and then have it in the back of your mind day to day until one day you see a problem and now you know that AI can actually help solve this one. So AI is especially good at solving certain kinds of problems. It's really useful for dealing with common cases, the core 80% that can be anticipated and prepared for well, which will pay itself off simply by the sheer quantity of actions that it can automate. This includes both answering questions, but also taking actions like tracking orders, changing statuses, or updating databases and things like that. Next up are problems that would be really good for retrieval augmented generations, which include finding and reading large amounts of documents to then give an answer based off it directly. And finally, there's using AI to increase engagement and interactions inside a product. This is often relevant in e-commerce scenarios where you're going to give recommendations, for example. So, in the Hack the North case, one day, a couple of organizers and I were discussing an issue. We spent all this time writing a handbook for participants to read and learn about the event. But since it was so long, very few participants actually read it. And instead, they would flood our organizers with questions that were answered inside the handbook or other similar content that we have made for them. And on top of that, we would regularly be answering the same questions over and over again, like what's the Wi-Fi password? What's the Wi-Fi password? What's the Wi-Fi password? When we would prefer just being able to answer a question once and then have other people find that answer more rapidly. So overall, that's the problem. And looking at the types of problems that AI is good for, this fits well into retrieval augmented generation and automating for that 80% of common cases. So, now that we found our problem, what does our AI solution actually look like? And clearly defining a solution comes with 5 big questions. The first one, pretty obviously enough, is what does our solution actually do? How does it address the problem that we have? In Hack the North's case, the solution is to be answering participants' questions about the event automatically. That's what we want our AI to be doing. It's not answering questions before the event, and it's not answering internal-facing organizer questions. We've defined a scope of what it'll be doing. Next up, what's the form factor for our AI solution? This is sort of where are we going to put it? Where do people interact with this? Could it be on a website in the bottom right-hand corner? Could it be a number that you can call on the phone and talk with automatically? In our case, we decided to use our event Slack so that there's a questions channel and it can be answering inside this questions channel in threads. That's a very organic way for our users to interact with the AI solution, and it's important for you to think about where the solution can fit into your customer or user's journey so that it's effective and organic and natural and easy to use instead of being out of the way. Because in Hack the North's case, having a phone number to call would be really inconvenient for participants, and they would just revert back to the old way of answering questions, and we would have done a whole lot of work for nothing. The next question is, what kind of data are we working with? Especially in this use case, we want to be answering questions. We need to both think about the data that we're going to use to generate the answers and the data that we're going to use to evaluate and test. So in our case, to generate the answers, we can use all our written content we generate. So that's the pre-existing handbook and the FAQ sheets. But we also identified that to be answering all the participants' questions, we're going to need to be collecting more information, like maps, menus, schedules, and things like that. We also decided that announcements could be fed in dynamically, so that's some more data that we're getting real time, as well as hooking our agent into our real-time scheduling API. On the data to test and evaluate our solution, we actually have archives of questions that have been answered in previous years. So that's what we can be using to be testing. Now, every scenario will be different, but it's important for your organization not to overlook the data requirements, both on the generation as well as on the testing sides, because that might often be a difficult thing to collect, and that can't just be engineered away with a smart solution. The next question I have is maybe a bit more nuanced, but it's actually, how are we answering? Are we answering users in one shot or having a back and forth conversation? There's pros and cons to both, and even at Voiceflow, we use both types. Our in-app assistant, Tico, that's in the bottom right-hand corner whenever you're on a Voiceflow website, that's a back and forth conversation. It has memory, and you can follow up on your questions so that it has contextual understanding of what you're talking about. On the other hand, on our Discord, we automate answering questions using a different version of Tico that tries to give the best answer it can in one shot. There's pros and cons for both methods. Having a conversation can be a more organic back and forth, it's a more classic solution, and it can let users get more information out of the bot by being able to clarify their question. On the other hand though, running conversations is much more technically complicated, both on building the actual AI agent itself so they can have memory and contextual understanding and be able to take advantage of the follow-up messages, and when it comes to your interface and the infrastructure that has to be running your AI solution. On the other hand, giving a single-shot answer will require more careful prompt engineering, so you can really get the most out of the one answer you get to give back from the user, at interpreting their question as broadly as possible, collecting as much information as you can to give them one perfectly packaged answer. But this does make the solution simpler to make and simpler to use for participants. And an added bonus is that having one-shot answers reduces the chance for abuse or exploitation or people trying to break your bot, because they have less opportunities to find cracks or trick the AI. So in Hack the North's case, we went for a one-shot solution as a prototype to keep it simple and safe. But for a subsequent version, we could definitely try improving our agent by having a back and forth conversation. It's important to note though, that in certain use cases, and especially ours here, it's not extremely simple to switch back and forth from having a one-shot answer versus a conversational answer. And it changes a lot of how your product will actually be designed when you're making a plan. So make sure to pinpoint this and be aligned as a team on what you're going to go with. The last important question is, what are the success criteria and how are we going to measure them? Are the measures going to be manual or automatic, quantitative or qualitative? What kind of interactions are we going to be analyzing? And here you have to think of both technical and business outcomes. So for this Hack the North case study, we selected first of all satisfaction through a reaction button that users can use to either say, yes, this was helpful, or no, I need help. Accuracy of answers through both manual review and marking if they're good or bad, as well as automatic answer scoring to see how well is the answer formatted and how well does it answer the user's question. We're looking at speed through the time to answer, and especially comparing that with the manual answering times for organizers, looking at historical data. The kind of conversations people are having so that we can improve our agent iteratively. If we see lots of people are asking about a certain topic that we don't really cover, for future implementations, we can make sure to include a specific section that's handcrafted for that and check for that in our quality assurance. And then lastly, the business metric we need to look out for is cost. How expensive is this agent to run, both in infrastructure as well as in tokens through our AI system? So all in all, through these 5 big questions, we were able to pinpoint some important information about what our solution will actually look like. I strongly recommend that if you're following along with this guide to make an AI solution, you ask yourself similar questions or think about other kinds of questions that you want to answer about the overarching solution that will have an impact on what it looks like in the end. Next up, we have to choose what technology we're going to be using to bring our AI solution to life. In the AI space, there's lots of options when it comes to the how of implementing a solution. And we'll walk through a couple common methods as well as why you might want to use them. Starting off with manually making API calls to LLM and other AI service providers like OpenAI, Cohere, or Anthropic. This gives you absolute granular control with the requests you're doing, but requires an insane amount of overhead when it comes to all the code you're writing to interface with them, even if some of these providers have their own SDKs, which makes building agents with prompt chaining, more branching paths, and complicated integrations more cumbersome to develop. Next, you can use LangChain. LangChain is a software development framework that enables creating AI agents by connecting large language model providers with external data sources, tools, and your own code, and provides a lot of abstraction on what's actually happening. LangChain can be really nice to get started with, but can start to bog you down as your AI project becomes more complex due to all of its abstractions. And because of this, has fallen out of favor with lots of companies that are using AI to make real projects. As this article says, LangChain was helpful at first when our simple requirements aligned with its usage presumptions, because it's very opinionated. But its high-level abstractions soon made our code more difficult to understand and frustrating to maintain. And plus, it doesn't make it especially easy to build and especially to understand large agents because of its limited visual designer. On the other hand, you might consider using automation platforms like Zapier to build your AI products. Zapier is a tool that automates creating workflows by connecting different apps and services, and can be integrated with AI to trigger actions and data flows across platforms without the need to write a lot of your own complex code. Building AI automations with tools like Zapier could be effective for making simple email recap system or a question answering system like the one we're studying in our case study. But services like these lack the agent building and AI features that are required to make a product that scales and becomes a lot more complex. This is where a platform like Voiceflow can come in. Voiceflow really shines as you build your agent up from a single step to a slightly larger agent up to a huge and advanced system, giving you more control of your agent's behavior at every step along the way. It brings both the convenience of a low-code tool when it's appropriate, like for when you're laying out your conversation diagrams and want to visualize branching paths, while also letting you write your own custom functions to integrate with your own proprietary services, or to build custom interfaces to deploy your Voiceflow product using the APIs. Voiceflow also provides you with the common tools that anyone building serious AI agents needs, like the knowledge base, which is ready out of the box, but can be customized to your needs by editing things like the prompts or other settings. So to contrast, where platforms like Zapier are automation platforms with AI capabilities, Voiceflow, on the other hand, is a platform tailor-made for building advanced AI agents that can then be deployed anywhere you want. Looking at our case study, Voiceflow is also a really good choice because of all of its collaborative features. We're working on a team here with multiple different stakeholders who need to be able to understand both the behavior of the agent, but also change the information in the knowledge base or make updates on the fly. So after having considered all those options, that's why we chose to make this Q&A chatbot experiment with Voiceflow. Okay, so now that we've answered this important question, let's work on making an effective plan. I'm sure I'm going to skim over this section a little bit, not because I don't want to share details with you, but because this really depends on a case-by-case basis and how you want to be running your process. I'll be showing you how we did it at Hack the North. The first thing we did is work on developing a product requirement document, or PRD. This document outlines both the vision and the reasoning behind the solution, so sort of recapping all the problem we identified before, the solution we identified, and the big questions about it, and concretizes them in a bunch of requirements we need to be developing in this product. Here on screen, you can see an excerpt of the PRD we wrote for actually developing this Q&A chatbot project. One thing to note here is that in your PRD, you're going to have different level of priorities. So here, the two ones I have on screen are both P0. These are mission critical, essential to have for the actual product to work. So obviously, this includes basic things like building a Voiceflow project that retrieves from the knowledge base and implementing a Slack interface for the chatbot. The product doesn't really exist without these requirements, but we need to write them down to clearly explain how they work, their intended behaviors, and the edge cases we want to handle and things like that. At Voiceflow, We always recommend having different priorities in your plan, especially when it comes to the actual development of the AI project itself, because you want to be building in a crawl, walk, run process. What we mean by that is you start with something that's really simple at a crawl level, maybe just a couple steps, a simple knowledge base. Then, once you're more familiar with the tool or you've proven that the project is viable, you can increase its complexity a little bit, add more specialized workflows, add more information, add more advanced knowledge-based lookups, hallucination reduction, abuse mitigation. And then, once you do more experimentation and more advanced features, you can go up to a run level and make an even more advanced bot that is able to maybe take actions or have back and forth conversations like we talked about before that might be a bit more complex. So let yourself categorize the ideas you have for your project into these different buckets of crawl, walk, run, and also leave space for adding improvements later or other new ideas that you think of while you're working on the project itself. It's important to get started with building something to know really what direction you want to go in because you're going to learn a lot while you're building. The most important thing that this document should make extremely clear is how the solution solves the intended problem down to the nitty-gritty of how it should behave. This is really important to have so that your entire team, from developers to stakeholders, are aligned on what this project is going to look like, especially because AI solutions like this are a newer technology that people might not be used to working with. So then we have this product requirement document that outlines how it should behave or the features it should have. We can work on making a technical plan. Are there any compromises or design decisions we need to make? The product requirement document is general enough that it explains the intended behaviors, but doesn't lock you into certain implementations. Now when you're making a technical plan, you need to decide what's going to go where, how are we going to do it, what's the order we program things in, how you split up your developer resources, and everything like that. This is also very specialized and depends on your own organization standards, but in our case, we followed our usual project development procedures. So here important questions were how are we going to deploy and host this, and getting a good understanding of the Slack framework we're building with, so that we can properly understand how we're going to develop the interface and what things like buttons are going to look like, the kind of messages we can do, the kind of events we can listen for, so that we can make sure that we can fulfill the vision in the product requirement document technically. So to give you a concrete example here, one of the requirements of the hackathon project was that organizers should be able to insert announcements into the knowledge base dynamically to add more information to the bot's repository of what it can answer about. The problem technically was, how do we make sure that it's only organizers adding information? We have to look a little bit into how Slack permissions work, how the organizer permissions would work, and in the end we came to a decision that we would actually take advantage of Slack's messaging permissions to limit this. So only top-level messages can be added as announcements, because in our announcements channel, organizers are the only ones who can send messages there. So if a message is sent there, it must be a valid message. So technically, we don't need to be doing any analysis inside the Slack bot to check permissions. So that's handled just by the platform we're using, Slack. And there's 1,000 other questions you'll have to answer as you make your own technical plan. And then the last little thing here was just making a diagram to lay out the ideas and see how everything's going to work together, drawing all the connections, which really helps developers and just the entire team understand how information is flowing, what's going to be where, what information are we connecting, and intended behaviors, so you can walk through everything that should happen and make sure that what you've technically planned aligns again with the product requirements and the overall vision. Now on to the last part of this process, which is presenting to stakeholders and pinning down some timelines. AI is still a relatively new technology, and while many stakeholders might have played around with tools like ChatGPT, it's really useful to try and have a hands-on demo they can play with to get a better idea of what the project you're pitching to them is all about. Voiceflow is actually really great for this with a built-in prototyping tool. If you've never used it, you can just go to the top left-hand side of your canvas and choose to share a prototype, and then you have a handy link to send to your stakeholders so they can play around with your project and get sort of an idea of what it's going to look like in the end. This can really help with getting people on board, and it's always amazing to see their reaction to a project that's actually working. Even if it's a very, very basic prototype, it really helps sell an idea. Also, since you did a great job preparing your product requirement document and technical plan, it's going to be much easier to have a clear pitch of what your project actually entails. That being said, you'll have to go back and forth about the technology itself and be ready to answer lots of questions about the AI technology, especially around what's possible and what's not and how certain things might work. Common questions include reducing hallucinations, redacting personal information, trying to break bots, cost, and other metrics, so have some answers prepared for them. You will most likely have to go back to your product requirement documents and some negotiations to make some changes. Here in the Hack the North case study, during the presentation and negotiation phases, we actually added more monitoring of what the AI agent is doing as a requirement for increased safety, established some topics we might want to stay away from or how we should handle emergency scenarios, and some requirements about not leaking too much sensitive info and mitigating potential abuse from participants. Once you're done doing your presentation and your stakeholders are on board, the last little thing you need to do is pin down some timelines. This depends a lot, again, on your specific use case, but some common criteria are how much development needs to be done, how much experience your team has making AI solutions with Voiceflow, and the complexity of the project. And these timelines will go in different phases, right? Because if you're following crawl, walk, run, it's going to be much faster to make a crawl than the time it will take to improve to walk and to run. So you might want to set a goal of, hey, we're going to get these priorities done by this time. In the Hack the North case study, the timelines were technical planning and preparation over 3 days, development over a full week, full time, with one full developer, which is me, and with contingencies for up to 2 weeks of development time, and then leaving an extra week for QA phases and iterative improvements to the actual project itself, which leaves us with 1 month until the actual beginning of the event to make any changes, have some overflow room, and collecting the information we need to feed to our agent so it's ready to tackle the questions day of. And bam! Now we have a clear and actionable plan for what our solution will be, how it solves a problem. We're sure that it's technically feasible, and our entire team is on board. Evaluation and planning is definitely time-consuming, but it's super valuable to get started on a good foot. That being said, don't let yourself get stuck in planning paralysis. With Voiceflow, it's easy to start playing around once you have a basic idea of what you're going to be doing. And playing around with a prototype can give you and other members on your team a better idea of what direction you want to go in with this project. So to recap, here's a slide that goes over those 5 big steps of planning and evaluation and how the Hack the North case study actually answered them. And I recommend that if you're planning on also making an AI solution, by taking a look at this case study series of videos, take a screenshot of this slide and see how you would fill it out given your scenario. If you enjoyed this video, the Voiceflow YouTube channel has a couple more videos on planning and business-focused information for building AI solutions, like the great 15 KPIs for Gen AI. The next video in this case study series will be looking at the development process, some challenges encountered, and a deep dive at a couple of the features that were developed. If you enjoyed this video, you will also like to see that one because it's also for both builders and for leaders. It'll be on screen and linked in the description below. I'll see you there.